All right, it's 6:30. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I will start with a roll call. Jack Scarborough, Bonnie Sears, Bridget Powers, Rebecca Hansen, John Ranlett, Chris Buckley, Marion Barnsley, and Brian Murphy. We will then move on to the minutes from the work session and hearing for the master plan on September 6th. Any edits, issues with these minutes?
I had a few things. On page 2 of 4, public hearing open 6:40, number 1, the second sentence down, second line, first complete sentence. He hopes this appears in the next part of what we people are going to design. What is we people refers to? Is that David Kent talking about?
I thought it was us. It was we people, the planning board was gonna do whatever.
And if that's the case, I wonder if that should say what the planning board is going to design, or what.
Are we designing things?
I guess it doesn't matter what we think we're doing, it's what he said in this case.
And it is in quotes, and that's why I wonder, and it's a little bit unclear to me.
Well, the part in quotes is just the small town atmosphere.
Oh, yeah. So, but I think this is a combination of trying to quote what these next sections, sort of the tenor of what people are trying to say, as well as, the content. So, who is we people? Anybody?
I guess I would be inclined to just leave it as is, because I think this is coming right off the video, so I think she's probably, is it this Dawn?
I agree.
Yeah. Because I do agree that it's confusing, but I think that this is probably the best record of what we have that was said that evening. What does everyone else think? I heard agreement at that end of the table.
Yeah,
I agree that it's confusing, but.
it is, but the way I took it was like it meant we, us. Maybe not, but that's the way I read it, so.
So here's does anyone else have anything? 'Cause I have like 3 things.
So we're gonna leave it, that,
I'm fine with that,
Okay.
if that's what we decide.
right.
And the second thing I have may be similar. On page 3 of 4, number 6, this is Frank Miller talking about the master plan. On number 6, the second line with a sentence. These next 3 sentences, tell me if you understand what they're saying. People need assistance understanding the process of taking a concept to the context to the process. How to get the permit ready, finance ready, shovel ready plan started. To get to the point where we can be acted on and see the results of what the citizens have said they would like to see happen. Is there any way we could turn that into one sentence that, it seems like that wants to be one sentence that says something a little clearer, or am I not reading it correctly? Am I missing something here?
No, you're reading it. It is a little, I read it, and I just said, well,
Right, it's a little long, but
it is confusing.
if that's what he said.
Yeah. I mean, it's not verbatim, but I think it's
Right.
the best boil down of what he did say at that point, so.
What did he say? Paraphrase. Tell me what is what is that? So and maybe and Frank's even here. Maybe we could get Frank at the end.
Right, I just want to be careful about pulling, just our collective memory to try and paraphrase what he said 2 weeks after the fact. So again, I'm just inclined to say that this is what the best way that Don could take that information and put it into something that was mostly coherent. Because I just don't want to, I'm not sure if we can actually get much more clarity than what's here without
This is
asking.
an official record.
Right, exactly. So I don't want to, I know Frank's here, but I don't want to ask him to come up and restate it, because then it's bringing that's taking something he said today, changing what he said 2 weeks ago to what he said today. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. I
So-
agree.
Plus, there's no inflection in the written word, so the way he said it might have been very clear at the time because of the way he said it, as opposed to the written word.
But does anybody know what that means?
Not
And does that
necess-
matter? I mean,
I think it seems like you're approaching it from trying to edit this to something that's more readable as a writer, as opposed to just the record of what was said. So I think I don't know.
and I guess
I get what you're saying. It's confusing.
so I look at it this way: if I, as on the planning board, was trying to explain something, and Dawn represented it in a way that wasn't getting my point across, we would certainly edit that, right? I would. So I just wonder, do we want that to make more sense?
So I think if we want that to make more sense, we need somebody to go back and watch the video to that moment, in both of those moments, and that would be fine, and rewrite it so it does make more sense. Which is fine. I think we should go through the rest of the minutes, but that would just need a volunteer to go back to watch that meeting and try and get a little more clarity. Because I think it's hard to take these words and translate it into something. If we don't know what it means, we'd need to go back into the original record to do that. Because this, yeah.
Part of the initial problem with this is it's transcript versus minutes. And planning board meetings are very content heavy.
Yep.
So we try and put as much in that comes from the mouths of people as can make sense, rather than just giving a bare bones, meeting open, meeting closed, somebody stood up, you know what I'm saying? These are the votes, boom, those are the minutes, versus the whole transcript idea. So we're trying to meld the two concepts and hit all the high points with testimony, but not have it read as a transcript at the end of it, which is no help.
All right, so I guess we need to decide as a board if this is acceptable enough record of that meeting, or do we need to go back in and get more clarity on this number 6 here?
Madam Chair, if you'd like, you can table these minutes as well, and I can have Dawn looking at it as soon as she's got a free moment, and I can sit through it with her if you'd like.
Okay. What does everyone think?
I'd accept them.
As would I.
And I'm more comfortable with what Brian just proposed.
I guess my inclination is if there's one person here who wants to get more clarity, then I think that we need to get more clarity. Unless we want to take it to a vote, so.
So moved.
To get more clarity? Or to, what's the?
Vote to accept.
Okay. Before we do that, do we want to go through and see if there's any other issues that are,
Yeah. I
any other issues in the minutes aside from that? So we're going to put a marker in that. Is that okay with you, Jack, just in case there's
Yes.
other? Okay. Okay. Other comments on the minutes?
So here, not to confuse the issue, but one more thing similar to this, but this might be so easily fixed that it might lend some light on the other two parts on, I guess, the 4th page, number 9. Victor Hedberg wondered, from Mr. Kent's perspective, and this is the part that I think is awkward, what close to the university is considered? And I think what he was trying to say is what is considered close to the university.
I would agree with that.
Plus his name's Viking.
I think he was
I
just
said
repeating-
I said it
sorry.
wrong, yeah.
I think he was
I
just
don't have
repeating
copies.
Mr. Kent's perspective.
Okay.
What close, in
Yeah.
quotes, to the university is considered.
But I think rephrasing it to just make it read what is considered close to the university. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I guess my point is, if someone was trying to make a good, if Frank had a good point, and I'm sure he did, we'd want to know what that is. You know, for the record, but.
Okay. Any other comments on the minutes? All right.
Actually, I just have one question on page 2. To number 2 and A. it's Bill confirmed that area is a catch-all. Is that meant to be zone? Or was he actually talking about the area? We were talking about the area west in West Plymouth on 3A.
It's my recollection that was the agricultural zone that he was talking about. Yeah.
Because that's what Mike Weaver's question was about the
Yep.
variety in the agricultural zone.
Yep. Okay, so we have 2 edits, and then, so now I think it's time to remake a motion, if someone would like to make a motion to approve these minutes, or,
There is a motion on the table.
okay, we just made a couple other edits, so I want to make sure that those edits are part of your motion as well.
Accepted.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay, any discussion before we bring this to a vote?
And the 2 little edits we'll make, but the other 2?
The other 2, the ones that, so, yes, we'd accept the minutes as with those 2 amendments. And the vote is basically determine if we don't approve these minutes, then we'll have to discuss on how we would, what we would need to do to accept these minutes. So, basically, if we approve these minutes, the board is saying that these 2 points that you raised, that there's enough clarity as written to have these be our record for that meeting. Okay. So, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay. It's the first time I think that's happened since I've been chair. It's very exciting.
I almost abstained.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I think that's good for us to have this discussion, so. So these minutes are approved?
Yes, and I'll look into that other thing,
Okay.
just to see what was actually
Yes, yeah.
said.
Well, I wonder, because I understand the point you made about melding what's actually being said, but by the nature of the task, there is interpretation.
Yeah.
And so it makes me wonder, is there a way to denote what is an actual quote versus then you would know that's what he said versus this is the record keeper's, the stenographer's interpretation of the discussion. That's a hard job to do. But I think I think it would make the job maybe a little harder if she has to put quotation marks and things, but then it would be clear that which part of it is denoting the record of what was said versus what part is interpretation.
I imagine it was also an issue of the microphone and
Sure.
having not us as speakers. Yep. So
Yeah.
I think in some ways it's easier if you actually have someone, instead of having it,
I
where
think
you
that's,
can rewind it a bunch of times, you
Yeah.
tend to get maybe a little more hung up on the details instead of capturing the big gist of it, so.
and you make the gist sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and that's, as a note taker at other types of meetings, that's a hard job to do
Yeah.
while you're doing it.
Right, especially, like I said, this has been some pretty content-heavy sessions that we've had the past 2 weeks, so.
Just a thought.
So we're gonna hold off on the September 13 minutes. Those have all been emailed to us, but not all of us have had a chance to read them, so we'll review those at our next meeting on October 4th. Is that correct?
First Tuesday? Yeah,
So, yeah.
Thursday.
Okay, so moving on to new business, we have 3 applications before us this evening, and just for those applicants that are here, just want to introduce the process that we go through, although it is it's Kevin, you're doing both of those, so you're pretty familiar with it, but, but we'll let the applicant present a brief description of their project, especially highlighting on any waivers that might exist. The board will determine whether or not the application is complete. We'll allow the applicant to provide more detail for their project if needed. The board will be able to ask questions. We'll open it up for a public hearing and then bring it back to the board at that point. So we will start with minor subdivision on PID number 217-007. Owner George R. Clifford requests a subdivision approval through his agent on a 7.97 acre parcel at 208 North Hebron Road, PID number 217-007. The proposed new lot. PID number 217-007-001 will consist of 1.26 acres, and the remaining portion shall become 6.69 acres. This property lies in the agricultural zone.
Is this supposed to be? I'm not good reading these things. Okay.
Clips are awfully handy.
Yes, this is land owned by George Clifford up on New Hebron Road, just up from the junction of Reservoir Road. And there is an existing house and shop garage on the property. This was actually his parents' house at one time. And what they're looking to do, it has an existing well, existing septic system. Everything is in. And what they're looking to do now is just divide off 1.27 acres and convey the house with that piece of land. It's not that this matters, but it's going to a family member, and they're just looking to divide off the house and keep the remaining land. We did receive state subdivision approval for this lot since it's under 5 acres. There's 176 feet of frontage on New Hebron Road. Like I said, everything is existing.
Any questions from the board on the completeness of this application?
No?
Thank you, Jack.
She couldn't hear us.
Good. Oh, yeah, I could not hear the head shake from over here. Maybe Bonnie could hear it.
Depends.
Would anyone like to make a motion about the completeness of this
Make a
application?
motion, we accept the application as complete.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Is there anything else to add?
Not really.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. Any other questions from the board before I open it up for a public hearing?
No.
Thank you. It is 6:48. I'm opening this up to the public. The public can come up and speak. If anyone is so inclined, please come up to the microphone if you want to. Okay, seeing nobody, it's still 6:48. And I'll bring this back to the board for any further discussion or questions. Or a motion of some sort.
I'll make a motion, we
Approve.
approve this plan
All right.
as we see it here.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Application is approved.
Do you remember, it used to repair our TVs. I know where.
Kevin, you've had a lot of practice.
Okay, next up, a site plan approval on PID number 110-023 for the expansion of a footprint of greater than 100 square feet of an existing restaurant, the Panther Pub. Change will require exterior expansion and interior alteration. Special exception from the zoning board will be required. Property lies in the village commercial zone.
I like the way you started that out when you said site plan approval. Does everyone have copies of these?
I do. I got one here. You want one? It's in here somewhere. I did go.
Panther Pub, which is located at 21 Main Street, owned by Lime Main LLC, which is, and the DeMarcos are here, the owners of the property. And basically what they would like to do now is extend the front of the building out 10 feet so that they could add some interior seating and also have a waiting room in this area where the entrance is, because it's kind of a airlock type of situation, because right now when the doors open, it's right into the restaurant. There's a change on the plan. I had originally suggested that we remove the tree that was in front of that, and I had been asked to leave the state if I take the tree down, so everybody's decided to leave the tree. It is going to be trimmed because the upper limbs are hitting the building and they're in the power lines, and the co-op is going to come to talk to them, and they're going to come down and they're going to trim the tree back, but the tree, will stay. And I can stop my campaign for the deforestation of Plymouth. And basically, the front will extend out. We're asking for, we'll have to go to the ZBA for a variance for the setback. It'll come back, it'll be set back just a little over 1 foot from the property line. The lighting will be, it will be soffit lighting, which will be down facing into the street area, so there won't be any upward lighting on it. And one of the items that came up today was that I talked to Brian and he mentioned the thing about if I can bring this up, the door, the way the plan is shown, the doors open up outward. And in doing that, if we did that, they would open into the sidewalk. So he suggested that they would be recessed so that they didn't open into the sidewalk, which was actually a very good idea. I was actually going to try to take credit for it, but it was his idea. And so we didn't have time to reflect that on the plans you had, but we have talked about that, and that's something that they would be looking at doing. And that would also be done, of course, in compliance with the fire department and fire code.
Okay. Any questions from the board about the completeness of this application?
I would like to ask one question, clarification. The doors are going to be outward opening?
I believe I think they have to be.
Yes.
I'm not, I can't speak to that 100% because I'm not sure, but I think they have to be.
Yes.
And that's a fire code thing, and whatever they have to do, they'll be done.
Any other questions or perhaps motions on surrounding the completeness of this application?
Make a motion, we accept the application?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Application is complete. Any other things you wish to present beyond the completeness of the project?
No, I guess just the, like I said, the fact that we have moved it back, so there is a proper sidewalk space between the tree, the hydrant, and where the building would be, in front of the building.
Can you point out on the map or on the plan here, for the buildings, the two buildings that are to the north, where are is it the hashed shaded area, or is it, I'm just trying to get a context of what.
Okay, these buildings?
Yep,
Yeah, this is the building, and this is a curbed-in area that they
Okay.
have out front.
okay,
And then, and similar to, this is the building, and this is a paved area that they have in front.
okay,
These just show, this is the bank across the street, and their sidewalk, or their entryway, ramp, and things like that come out to here, and this is the front of the building.
because the other thing that we have here as part of the information is the departmental review. Brian, do you want to
Sure.
highlight that for us?
Okay, because this, but the only department this will affect is highway, and you'll be seeing more of these reviews going forward as you have in the past. So what Joe had said was, Adding 10 feet to the front of the building gives very limited space for the tractor, the sidewalk tractor that the town operates. They have concerns of damaging the tree or the tractor, or if all the windows in front of the building are going to remain where they are and just be pushed out. He just wanted to make sure that they were elevated enough that the windrow created wouldn't break them, and the siding as well. Okay, he also brought up the front entrance issue, because we had that conversation this morning. Door needs to swing out. And he has a huge concern for pedestrians with that, but if you're addressing it, that goes away. And the tractor for maintenance or plowing. Site visibility could be impacted coming onto South Main Street from the driveway adjacent to the north of the pub. Is it normal to allow wires to run, I guess, parallel over a single-story structure? I guess that has to do with the co-op more than anything else. They're more concerned with not structures underneath so much, but trees, because obviously they grow into the wires. However, it's fairly typical for power lines to run adjacent to, because they know that they're worried about things interfering, and if you know the set height of that single story, it's going to be well below the actual power lines themselves. So that was the gist of Joe's comments, but he just wanted to make sure that there wasn't more hazards being created to the plowing operations than, and those were his concerns about.
Okay. Hang on one second. Let's see. So we've got, I'm assuming you're a representative from the, okay, sorry.
Oh, it's Joe himself.
So if we have any questions for the board, I'm not sure if we want to bring this in before the public hearing. My inclination is to hear from the highway department before we open it up to the public hearing. What does the rest of the board think?
Yeah, because those are my questions.
Would you like to come up and, if you have anything else to add, or we could just also ask you questions?
No, you can come up.
Okay.
I just want to kind of go over what Brian was saying. So, for the highway, my biggest concern is being able to plow in front of that and maintain it. And so they have just over 5 feet. If you pull 10 feet off the building, it's relatively tight between there and the tree. And so that really creates an issue for us, because the tractors are a large sum of money, and so the reason why we have variances, for setbacks on property is so we have room to do our work. And I feel like this is really stretching it, trying to give us the opportunity to maintain in front of that building. So I understand what they're trying to do, and I think it's a good idea. I guess in my world, my suggestion would be maybe if they had 8 feet instead of 10 feet, that would allow enough room for us to do our business.
Okay.
I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's my understanding they're probably going to put windows back in the front of that too. And whenever we have windows in front of the buildings, they seem to pose more of a threat to us when we're plowing, and it's not that it can't be done, but it makes it a lot more difficult for us to do our job.
Okay. Any questions from the board about
Do
this?
you have similar issues in front of other buildings?
I do.
So how do you treat those?
We deal with them as we can, but any time I have an opportunity not to create those issues, I try to. That's what I try to do, not keep creating
Sure.
issues that make it more difficult for our department. Like if you go in front of, North Main Street, if you're plowing down the sidewalk and people come out of the storefront and they're not paying attention, they get all nervous when the tractor's coming by and all of a sudden they open the door and they step out and it's right there. I mean, it's truly is kind of a safety issue. And so it takes an awareness on the individuals coming out of the building plus the guy on the tractor. So we always have a concern for public safety. So the more space that we give ourselves to allow for, if there's someone not paying attention coming out of a building, and I mean, if you step out off 10 feet right straight into the path of that tractor, that 2 feet gives you more room for error. So my concern is just to try to promote a better area to take care of our sidewalks and safety issues. And the other thing, I just want to make sure whatever they do for lighting, or that it's up high enough, because our tractor, I meant to get a measurement for Brian for that and I didn't, but I can get it. So we've had incidents in the past where people have put awnings on their storefront, and we've had tractors, like the tractor might go under it, but the strobe light for it, they would take the strobe light off, and so simple concerns.
All right. So it seems like what you're saying is that it's not so much the space between, say, the tree and the building as it is just the fact that the building's coming right up to the sidewalk.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
And then, you start plowing snow and there's really you gotta push it straight. There's no room to, an extra couple feet would help you be able to move it and push it along, especially if you got windows in front and you're trying to push the snow along.
Yep. Other questions from the board for the highway department? Okay. Thank you for presenting your information. We appreciate it. Thanks for coming in tonight. If you're sticking around, there might be other questions in the public hearing, so.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
Unless we have, or does the board have any questions or comment at this point?
I do. Kevin, what is the distance between the tree and the building now, the way it's proposed? Is that 6 point?
Building?
Yeah, is
Yeah,
it
6.4 feet.
6 point?
And that's from the edge of the tree. It's not from the middle of the tree, that's from the edge.
From the trunk,
Yeah.
And that's a poplar?
I thought it was hybrid poplar, but I've been taken to task on that too, but nobody has told
What is
me
it?
what it is, but I
Call it a tree.
Deciduous tree.
call it an in-the-way tree.
Well,
Yeah, but
well, maybe we could talk about that in a minute, yeah.
I thought it was a hybrid poplar, but
It's whatever the town planted then.
When was that planted? Because that must have been a while ago. I mean, all those Bradford pears that they planted are like a fraction of the size of that thing, and so, I mean, it would make sense that it could be, Bridget and I actually took a drive-by just before we
did a
came
site
here.
visit.
We did a site visit, and the first thing we noticed was that tree, and we're worried it was gonna be removed because there's not that many nice street trees, because that's a fairly large one. But if it's a poplar, those are pretty short-lived anyway, and but anyway, maybe we get some more information and I'll.
yeah.
Can you talk about the doors are now, if they need to be open out, they're gonna get recessed inside a little bit further?
Right.
So the idea is someone's not gonna push open the door and smack
Right.
somebody or a plow
Actually,
or a
what
tractor?
would happen is, the wall might come out, but the doors would actually just be set in like 3 feet. So you'd step in an area and
Yep.
the doors would open out.
Okay.
So
An alcove.
basically, you'd be undercover while you were opening the
Okay.
door. But
Great.
they wouldn't come beyond the front of the building.
Right. Okay. I have some questions, but I think it can wait until after the public hearing. Anyone else have questions or discussion before I open it up to the public hearing?
Just a note, the entry ramp is required ADA,
Okay,
so, it's configured properly at this point, and it should remain there. When I was looking at it, it would appear to me that should the weather strip at the bottom of the doors coincide with the end of the ramp, it would work out well for everybody.
okay. All right. Any other questions or comments from the board that needs to happen before the public hearing? Okay. It is 7:06. I'm going to open up the public hearing. If anyone has any comments to make at this point about this application, please come up to the podium and state your name.
Good evening. Sharon DeMarco. I own 21 Main Street. I just have a question for the board and for the highway department as well. Is there anywhere in town that a tractor is not used on the sidewalks?
Yep.
Well, why then would this project be impeded by a tractor or removal for snow? Why couldn't the highway department get out a shovel and shovel the small area? I've been there now for, 9 years. And in 9 years, I have shoveled the front of the Panther Pub and Grill more times than I have hair on my head. So as far as a tractor being an obstacle for our expansion, that's something that I just don't understand. Where there are many, many other buildings and structures on Main Street where I know a tractor isn't used.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
I'd like to just rebuttal to that.
Yeah, if you don't mind coming up, being in front of a microphone somewhere, will get us better minutes.
So anywhere where the tractor can't go on the sidewalks, those people, the storefront people, maintain that. So, and because the tractor can't get through there. And there are several people on Main Street that come out and do their work before the tractor even comes out. So there are a lot of people that work with us, but it is not our job to shovel in front of any of those businesses. That's why we have the tractor.
Okay.
So to create something that's gonna make more of a concern, it is a big deal to me. So that's where I stand.
Can I ask, is that something the town is comfortable with, having store owners maintain their own sidewalk, or does that?
No, we don't enforce that, and it's just, it's a preference to store owners, what they want to do. You know, some come out and shovel in front, so when we come by, we collect all the snow. And
Would that be a solution to this problem if they agreed to shovel out their own sidewalk?
Not really, not to me. I mean, I once you lose that, then it's gone. So if I don't have to lose that right away, then it works better for our department.
So do you actually plow in front of the pub now, or is it shoveled out?
Well, it's plowed, but there's a section where the snow builds up
Gotcha.
that we take care of because we have that room that we're talking about here, and we do maintain it, and there is a proper, like, the tractor is fine to go by, it only goes by in a path, so the snow does build up. So if the door is recessed, we shovel anyways, so I don't understand how the building itself, if the doors are recessed and it looks like this, why we can't have, that access. We maintain it anyways, we're gonna continue to maintain it, the tractor's still gonna go by, and it's still gonna have enough room, there's not gonna be any issues. There's, the sidewalks coming up because of the roots of the tree, and are gonna agree to, you know, take care of that and fix that, you know, so I don't understand what the big deal is, because we're going to take care of it. We plan to.
So when they said there was 6.4 feet, there is 6.4 feet to the base of the tree, but then the tree comes up and it goes on an angle, and so it's less than that when the tractor comes by.
Hang on a sec, I'm gonna, at this point, I don't want to open this up to a debate between two separate individuals. All comments need, you can, hang on one second there. All comments need to be directed through me, the chair. So if we want to make a discussion, and at this point, we're trying to make this, get the board as much information, so we know what our highway department is dealing with, and we know what our applicant is dealing with. So if you have more to say, please continue. Otherwise, I don't want to have a discussion between parties, so.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay, we may have more questions for you, so. All right. That said, is there anything else, the public applicant, would you like to add anything? Could you mind coming up and just stating your name, just so we have it for the record? Thank you.
I'm Kate DeMarco, I own the Panther Pub, and what he's talking about with the tree is overgrown, it hasn't been maintained. What he's talking about, the base of the tree, when the tractor comes by, it doesn't even, there's an outline of like granite, you know, base stone around the tree. When the tractor comes by, it doesn't even go near that. It has enough room and a path to continue, and it will continue to have that path. The building's not going to impede it, and we're going to recess the doors, and we're going to maintain that area like we have. The tractor can still go by. I don't understand what the issue is. We're going to take care of the tree. We're going to trim it. We're going to do everything the town wants. We just, you know, require this extra space, and we feel like it's going to be beneficial to the town and obviously our customers. So that's why we're requesting this. And the 10 feet gives us enough room and enough room for the tractor to go by. And whatever the tractor doesn't do, we will maintain ourselves. We have for years. We have done it for 9 years. So we will continue to do it.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
1 second, I'm just going to see if there's any other public comments. Any other public comments? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing now at 7:14. Bonnie?
Yes, I was just wondering, with the ramp that has to come out, like, there's a ramp now, how far, at the end of the ramp, how much feet have we still got on the sidewalk? Still enough feet from the edge of the ramp?
Well, right now, the ramp comes out, so it's probably, that's back about 3 feet from where the building would be now. Hang on 1 second. Yeah, the ramp now is about 3 feet back from where comes out about 7 feet from the building now.
So what I'm wondering is, if it's, you know, you got your sidewalk here, is that ramp going to extend onto that sidewalk, or it's going to be, okay?
No.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay. Good question, by the way.
Other questions from the board?
So the seating will increase by 30 feet?
What's that?
The seating, I mean, by 30 seats, was that, did I read that right?
The
How many
seating
seats will it add? That's right.
10 feet out from the length of the building, and then, 10 feet, actually, it was 11, and we actually decreased it to make more room for sidewalk.
So I guess, I'd like to see a bit of a board discussion, unless we have any specific questions, just about the, I think what we need to balance right now, and this is my opinion, that we've got to balance the needs of the highway department and what is fair for the applicant. It seems like I don't want to place an undue hardship on our applicant because so they can't expand their business, but it's something that's happened in multiple other places, or there's other businesses that are coming right up to the sidewalk. So I'd like to hear some other ideas from the board about what we think about that.
I think I would be most comfortable if all parties got together for a site visit and we actually could see what, especially because there seems to be some discrepancy about how the tree leans. I mean, if we could actually all see what we're concerned about. I know it postpones things a little bit, because obviously we're not going to rush out and do that tonight, but you know, if we could actually get out there with the highway department, measure, see what all the concerns are, and maybe figure out some way to make everybody happy.
I'm not an arborist, but I have walked the sidewalk. I've walked past the tree. I think it's a very beautiful piece of Plymouth downtown. It needs to be pruned, and that can be done very painlessly and still maintain the beauty of what it's intended to do.
And that's one of the things, and I am an arborist, that would be a nice thing to go see on the street level, to what we could do with that tree, how we could protect the tree. If it's, see what kind of tree it is, because if it's a poplar, which someone told you it wasn't a poplar, it may be a linden. We saw it from the car, but it looked like some kind of fast-growing tree. I mean, maybe there's mitigation we can do that would actually benefit Main Street in the long run. But I would be most comfortable going down there and taking a look with everybody and getting input on the ground, I think.
I think Chris is right. It'd be nice to have everybody happy with the town crews and the owners of the pub.
Are there other businesses that have that same relationship to the sidewalk? Have there been variances by the zoning board that are the same?
No, most of the buildings along Main Street are existing stock. This would be, I believe, as far as I know, the first that I've seen since, other than Main Street Dental, which was a complete rebuild.
Right.
But as far as building on their own property, but into an area that was formerly considered public. This is the first one I've seen since 1985.
And as far as some of the other buildings in that neighborhood, we've got some that looks like they've got curbs that kind of stick out to that area, but nothing that's an actual building. So, yeah, part of the issue is concern for pedestrians, but also just where is the snow going to go? And can the highway department operate safely? So.
Where does the driveway go?
It's a dead end.
It's a dead end?
Yeah. It serves the building to the north.
Which is apartments? And how many units in that building? Is there a lot of traffic in and out of there?
Only when they're parking, but again, I haven't seen anybody pull in or out either. I think it can only host 2 cars.
I think we're sort of at odds with the idea that there is a special exception that's required from the zoning board. That, understand that correctly, right?
Yes.
So,
The calendar put this upside down from
Yep.
normal.
yep, so, I also hesitate to debate too heavily about this because we might have an opinion about it, but the zoning board might have a differing opinion. And we might, so, I'm just not sure. So it sounds like some people want some of the board would like a site visit?
Yeah, I think that
I
would
think
be
so.
helpful.
I think it'd be appropriate if we can
could
get,
you-
if we can
and
get the
we could all
tracker
go
out
together?
there so we can actually see, because it's rather tall, so if the tree does come out.
Right, well, I think just some measurements would be helpful to know how tall it is. Imagine, hoping those things are still in winter storage, right? The sidewalk flowers. But just some idea of how tall that is and what kind of space is required. Is this something the board would be willing to do at our work session in 2 weeks?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will say that I will not be here at that time, so, and if we're having a full board work session, then that means we'd have to run it as a meeting with minutes and stuff like that, so as long as you're okay with that, Chris.
I'd just suggest that we go a little bit earlier to take advantage of the daylight.
Yeah, yeah.
So, we should set a time of maybe, can we all meet at 5:30 at the site? Is that something that would work for the applicant?
Yeah, what day would that be exactly?
2 weeks from tonight, so October 4th.
I'm not gonna be in town, is there any way we can do it before that? A little bit before? By any chance?
Does the board want to do 4 meetings in 1 month?
Can we do like, can we get on the 27th or the 25th? I mean, we're just looking at the site.
Right, we have to convene an actual meeting, so we have to be able to post it, or is it just a continuation of?
This would be just standard posting 5 days before.
Okay, all right. So yeah, what we're dealing with is we meet the first and third Thursdays of every month. We're a volunteer board that has already met 3 times this month. So that's something that I want to leave to the rest of the board.
Can we provide, like, pictures or something like that? That would be sufficient enough?
At this point, I think it's best for us to see. This is pretty standard across the state. Our state planning guidebook or handbook actually suggests we do site plans, and that we take the time we need to make an appropriate decision for the town. So,
Can you meet with another person that's related to the building so that you can talk to them as far as like if we're not there?
oh yeah. I mean, technically, I think we could do it without you as well, but we would certainly like to include you guys in it as well.
As long as you're comfortable.
Yeah.
My father, who did the plans that you're looking at there, he could probably meet with you, measure everything out, show you what our plan is and what we want to do, and we can actually show you kind of where the snow goes up, what we maintain during the snow season. That driveway that's there is not ours. It belongs to the people who own that building, and they plow that and maintain that. So
All right.
we can show all that if you'd like.
So my inclination is to not make a special meeting for this. I think that at this point, that's a precedent I would be hesitant to start, and also just, I know I'm dealing with some meeting fatigue this month as well, as I'm sure everyone else is. So,
I won't be at the meeting on the 4th.
who will be at the meeting on the 4th? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have a quorum. So as long as, if any one of you guys needs to back out, then we'll have to postpone, because we won't have enough.
Or get Steve.
Yeah, maybe we should alert Steve too, so for,
It's just he hasn't sat in on this portion of it, so, yeah.
So we would meet on October 4th at 5 o'clock.
We're still working out those details, so, what does everyone think?
What, for the 4th?
Yeah, if it's too much, it's too much, we're,
No, it's
Yeah.
fine with me.
Yeah,
I can do it, that's no problem.
okay. Chris?
I'm good.
I'm there.
We're not
Brian?
limited to Thursdays, Madam Chair.
Right, I'm trying to stick with our regular meeting
Yes, gotcha.
schedule, so we're not
And
spending,
we can have the meeting.
we'll just come, can go right back for the meeting here, so, so 5 o'clock, I think even 5:30 would probably, that would work for us. All right, now we've established what works for us. There's a lot more of us here, so, Joe, would that work for you, 5:30 on the 4th?
Yeah.
Okay. And you'll be able to come with measurements. I mean, if you wanted to drive the tractor, that'd be extra exciting. But if just the measurements, I think would be sufficient. We appreciate that. And for the applicant, would you be able to send a representative that you think could adequately present?
We have at least 2 representatives there that can show you measurements and all
Great.
that stuff.
And if anything comes up, if the scheduling doesn't work out, then just let us know and we'll work to try and reschedule. But
We'll make it work.
yeah, it is herding cats around here, so there's a lot of us. No offense, all of you. Well, you guys all cats. But there's a lot of us. Okay. So with that, we're gonna just table this for now. Do I need to make a motion to
Continue.
continue? Thank you.
It never hurts.
It doesn't hurt.
Belt and suspenders.
Would anyone like to make a,
Make a motion, we continue this to October 4th at 5:30.
All right, I heard a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you, everyone. Okay. Keep your paperwork this time, guys.
And I like that idea of going out and actually looking at
I
it.
think,
Yeah.
and that way, we can be sure of what we're
Right. No,
looking at.
I'll go out and try and get an ID on that tree before I head on vacation.
And by then, maybe you'll
Well,
have
you
time.
go grab the
maybe
tractor. and-
Yeah.
By then you'll have time to be able to tell me what kind of tree that is.
Okay, I just had to get out of the car and take a look. Who told you it wasn't a poplar?
Somebody just said they didn't think it was.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't, from a distance, it was so multi-branched, I wasn't sure.
Chris, maybe you and I can go down and
Leaves look like it, but
ID.
the bark doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that
Talk to the
transformative
trees.
bark like a
I
poplar.
mean, I am,
Some kind of ornamental.
I know my
tree,
trees.
think.
Yeah, and poplars usually aren't used as an ornamental
They
tree.
have a hybrid that grows fast that they plant in a lot of places. Not depending on the spot.
Okay,
Not taking your clips, are you?
yeah. I think they've assimilated themselves to being town property. All right, so number 3, administrative matters. Bruce Cunningham, Tenny Mountain Development Group seeks to complete a previously granted invested site plan review for development of 6 residential units in the agricultural zone. He is re-presenting the site plan for comment.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Bruce Cunningham, that's my name that's on that form. With me tonight is Jeff Lewis,
Okay.
the engineer, the chief engineer in charge of the whole project, and Adam Bouchard, the developer. I heard the way that you read that, and I would just like to emphasize that before I go into starting to talk about any plans and make sure we're clear, is Brian has been working with us, we've been working with him, and things are great, and he wanted to make sure that we got in front of you to talk about what we're about to be talking about. And so the form that we use, the site plan form, we're really not here for site plan review. That's why I used the phrase the administrative hearing. That we're just here to make sure that everybody's acknowledging where it is that we're trying to accomplish here tonight with regard to using the phrase grandfathered, which is really substantially vested. When you look at it, when you're talking about something that started in one project and then that the permit didn't expire or the approvals didn't expire. So just as long as we all know that, we're not here for that. That's why no abutters were notified. It wasn't that type of a site plan hearing. Okay, good. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Tenny Mountain. I don't want to assume anything, but back in 1988, this project was approved. And it is upside down. Wondering why I couldn't see without my glasses on. Okay. So anyways, so that was approved. And just sat there, and I don't know, I know some of the history just from being involved, but I wasn't around for that. So what they did do is they got all the roads in, they got all the water in, they got the sewer in, they got the electrical conduit in, and then whatever happened, happened. And they also got 6 foundations in. And so the whole plan was an approval for 35 duplex lots. 6 lots were put in conjunction with all the infrastructure that was put in. No one knew what to do with them. And so now the current developers are talking about moving forward and possibly building out on those projects, on those foundations. And what we wanted to come in here after speaking with Brian to confirm that it is substantially invested because of all the infrastructure that was put in, the foundations were put in. We cleaned out all around them just to see whether or not they're still accessible, whether it's usable, whether it's feasible to even do it. So we got that far. Before we go any further, we wanted to make sure that, yes, it's substantially vested, it's grandfathered, and then we can go to the next steps. The next steps would be, not necessarily the approval process, but on our end that we would provide to you people, is what would go on top of those foundations. You know, if the foundations are grandfathered, you got to use the foundations. The plans that were designed for those 24 years ago are not going to be the plans that's going to be used. So we interpret and expect to have to come back here to show you that, of what we're going to do. The plan that I just gave you is an overlay of what the plan that was approved and what the foundations were actually put in and where the infrastructure, the water, the sewer have been located, so that it's substantially the way it was supposed to be. The other next step, we're coming back one more time to inform you of what it's going to look like, what are we going to put on it. We would come back and show you if there were going to be any modifications to the plan in order to make it work. That's, you can see just by looking at that, back then, the house was pushed back maybe a couple of feet. One is off kilter, a couple of feet one way. So we might have to change some of the parking, not change the plan, but in order to adjust, in order to, accommodate what's already put there. This is the actual as-built plan. That is what we currently did. It was done August 2018 in order to accomplish that overlay so that you could see what was approved and what was actually done. That's what that plan's all about. Now, I know there's going to be plenty of questions, but having showed you that, showed you what we're trying to accomplish in the short term, in the long term, we're referring to that grandfathered section as phase 1. This infrastructure and all those things, okay, they're going to be changed, and that will be our site plan. That was part of the conceptual we came in months ago and came in and explained to you. So we'll be calling that phase 2. But that's changing. The lots are changing, the configuration changing, the hotel is changing. So that would be site plan review. That would be, the whole long-term step of what these developers are doing. So that's phase 1, where the duplexes have already been built, and then the other 2 cul-de-sacs. We'll be discussing at a future meeting, but that's where they're headed.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly, and we've never seen this before, that we are just hearing the applicant out, and Brian, if you don't mind just making sure that I'm thinking this
Yes.
correctly, that, that we can maybe ask some questions, offer some feedback, but pretty much we're just getting up to speed on what's happening right now. There's no vote, there's no approval
Right,
to be
this is
sought.
about the right to go forward
Yep.
with a
Okay.
vested site plan.
Right.
Not only was there planning board approval, but also there were building permits issued for those 6 foundations.
Okay,
With the condition that they come back for almost a design review prior to building on them, which is essentially where we are today.
so the site plan review was just for the foundations?
Today.
No,
Yeah, well, it was for the whole concept, actually for the big plan
Okay.
of the 70 dwelling units, the 35 foundations that they gave them the big one. But they piecemealed, essentially they were phasing themselves when they started and put in the 6 foundations at the beginning, and there were other factors that caused them to stop. But that was the only part of the project that I saw that really had a hard and fast stake. The other roadways, and there may be conduits in there, but if the plan is changing anyway, that's not really to be considered. So the fact that it's a decrease, a huge decrease from what was originally granted, but that was what they were talking about. So if and as Bruce had said, you can view this as phases and call this phase 1, building on the existing and vested site plan and building permits. And then they would come back and talk, like he was saying, about the bigger picture as they hammer it out.
now if I'm understanding this correctly as well, and sorry if these are just stupid questions, but I'm finding this confusing. The foundations already exist. The site plan from 1988 or whatever year it was won't, if say these foundations weren't built, the site plan is expired at this point.
Correct.
Since nothing has been,
Yeah,
if nothing has been built.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's that, the codicil when you grant site plan review, that they have 2 years
Yep.
to get the project vested.
Yep.
This had been done a long time ago. And there was enough done there by any metric to view it as a vested project.
okay. Well, I'd rather see development where there's already been development anyway, but,
So once it's vested, it's good forever.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, it depends on the developer. But it could be. I mean, you could probably say, well, it's not good enough for us. But I don't know that you'd really have a firm footing if you made that. claim. Because, like I said, not only did they have the vesting from the site plan, but they also did substantial improvements under the building permits, which put those 6 foundations in. Anyway, so, and having hit those marks, unless there was something really strange going on here with the plan or with the timeline, then essentially they have the right to continue under the existing plan. So yes, it is grandfathered in that regard. You know, it's, I don't know if it takes much imagination to say that since they haven't gotten to the point where, you know, they did design review, which is not a hard and fast thing in the town. The foundations were built with codicil that they had to come back for building permits for the vertical building. And it's right there on the building permit, I read it. Then at this point, and they stopped, then they can go forward at this point from that with what they have hard in the ground. And they're going, like you said, we'll come back and give you a design review of the buildings that are going to be there on this particular phase, in addition with the rest of it. So, you know, as far, they do have the right to build according to current law. Whether you hold them to the original plan, and I hope you don't, because they were kind of chalet-looking buildings. But again, that goes to intent. You know, certainly, you know, if you wanted to make that argument, you'd have to run it all the way down to the actual building plans that were presented at the time. And if there was any variation in the materials, that would be enough to stop it there. And we've all known that, you know, the difference of 24 years in building sciences has been leaps and bounds, especially in the last 10 or 15. So you may not be able to obtain the materials that were first proposed, though there are other things, you know. So if you're going by the letter,
Right.
that's one thing. But if you're going by the intent, it's a clear path.
I like this, that was very clear, that was very concise. And the reason we have, I've had it, based on my experiences for all the years I've been doing this, on many occasions, all it requires is a letter to the planning director, and you get your new building permits. Brian wanted us to come in and talk to you and tell you and give you an opportunity to have these questions, and not realizing you haven't had someone ask this before. That's why, and so, and you were good with it. We're happy coming back and keeping you up to date.
Other questions, comments?
You've had those foundations, I think we discussed this for some reason last time, but those foundations have been examined, they're sound, all that infrastructure is,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the decision hasn't been made totally as to what to do with them. We just wanted to make sure that as we're making the plans, that we know what we can work with and what we can't work with. And when I say, you know, when you were saying the design, they were designed to be duplexes, and they're very small duplexes, and I can only assume, going back to 1988, they were thinking about the ski area, and people would come up and do that kind of thing. If we might come back here and still on the same foundation, not changing any of it, but make it a single-family residence, as opposed to something like that. Whatever makes sense. But we wanted to make sure, not put him on the spot on himself, and make sure we could do it, but yes, we've had them looked at. That's why we had the excavator down there and cleared everything else, so everybody could get in and take a look.
Yeah. Have you gotten any third-party testing on the foundations, other than just visual inspection?
No, just the engineers. We haven't had anybody do any of that stuff. Which, just since we're on the record and talking about it, I would suspect when we come for a building permit, you'd be asking for that, and we'd be prepared to give it to you. So that's even needed for this.
And there is a chance that you wouldn't use the existing footprints of those foundations?
No, if it's grandfathered legally, we have to use the
Okay,
footprint.
all right.
We might change the design to make it look nicer, or maybe, you know, go single family as opposed to small
Yeah,
duplexes,
yeah.
that's all.
What goes on top of them may,
Correct.
yeah.
I like chalets.
Okay.
I believe that they were
We've changed our plans.
I believe they were 3-story.
No kidding, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, sorry. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So I just have a question for you. How is that being accessed? Is it straight out of the mountain onto, how do you access that?
Are you familiar with Davis Road? Yeah. Can you visualize Davis Road? As you're coming up Davis Road, that's the existing road. When you come in the main entrance, it goes to the left, and you're coming up, and the existing 6-unit buildings are on the right-hand side. You come up, if you go all the way up to the top, almost to the lodge, the road is already there.
One of my concerns is there's another access, which is Melvin Road.
Yep.
And so that one's kind of in disrepair. And so if you're making more of an impact on that mountain, I'm struggling with the way that road is, because it's impacting the town road right now. So I might have a concern maybe of at least bringing it up to spec so it doesn't impact our road anymore.
Are you talking about for the 6 units, or are you talking about the whole project?
I mean, I don't know if that road is just used for a fire exit. I mean, so if you're using the mountain, if you keep putting traffic in there, and that's an outlet.
We're gonna have to address that problem.
Hey, I'm gonna step in for a second.
As we
Yeah.
get to the bigger picture, this is.
Hey, I'm gonna step in for a second here and just say that I think that for this is grandfathered in, this is what it is. But as we start working on this entire property, we certainly look to your feedback to help us resolve these issues. So, yeah, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was a good question, but that's where I wanted to answer it, is that's down the road, so to speak.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, other questions? Okay. Thank you. Thanks for coming in. Alrighty. Unfinished and other business. A letter of congratulations to Dr. Steve from the board.
Did not have a chance to draft it yet.
That's fine, because I didn't do the other thing, the master plan formatting / minor edits, so.
Shame on us.
Yeah. Which I'll get, so the one issue is I need to build the signature page. So what I think I'd like to do is take that one page, print it out, have everyone sign it, and then we'll scan it and insert it, but I don't want to scan the entire document because it will look terrible. So I will get it before our next meeting, have everyone there sign it, and then maybe you can get your signature at some other point. So maybe I'll even get it before, and I can get your signature beforehand.
I could just forge it.
Yeah, I could do that too, yeah. So I'll have those edits by the time we meet next, so. Any other unfinished business from the board?
I just had a question as I was going over these minutes, and I just wondered if we were doing this. Something about the overlay in the zoning, and it was suggested, but you would have to speak to that in the master plan to make it legitimate. Are we speaking to that, or have we spoken to that in the master
Yes.
plan?
At that point, I kind of put it to the board because that was the one substantive possible amendment to add to the master plan.
Okay, and so that's,
And I just wondered if there was enough coverage in the thoughts that were expressed in there to accommodate that concept. And the board deemed that, yes, there was. We pulled little parts here and there and were able to stitch it together.
I guess I missed that part. Okay, so this is, huh? I was here, yeah. I didn't say I wasn't here. I said I missed it, I guess. Okay.
We have moments.
With you.
I'm not perfect here. Okay, this is good. Thank you.
So I have a question, and I'm not sure if this is, because I am sort of idealistic here, the site plan review, And thinking about the application again, and the required questions, and then there's a break in the application, and then there may be questions related to how this project considers the master plan, which we've just adopted, which, for example, has, ensure that there is an adequate supply of accessible dwelling units in and near downtown and other neighborhoods to serve the needs of our growing senior population, and enable creative site design to minimize development costs while providing a mix of housing types and conserving high-priority resources. And I wonder how we could, encourage applicants to consider these ideals that we've set forth in this master plan.
I think our site plan review is due for an update. So, and that's something for us to think about in the next couple of years, is working on updating that so we can try and encourage our applicants and have them refer back to the master plan through the process, so.
Right, it'd be nice if they reviewed.
Put an insert in there that you've read the master plan and
Yep.
how does this fit into it and
Yep.
what
So-
consideration we have.
So I now have the master book of the wish list. I am now carrying this with me to every meeting. So I will add some important page, let's see. That's our one on our list, is to consider reviewing site plan.
With compliance
Yeah.
to,
Or with adherence to
you know,
the master plan. Okay. This is our wish list.
Did you just have a moment?
oh, I know I got a leg cramp. I've been up on a ladder. It just,
Oh, no.
whoa.
All right, so today is the 20th. Okay. So that's on our, yeah.
Reflecting on the discussion of last week,
Yep.
too. I mean, I think the idea is to consider the town and its needs as a whole, rather than by each individual plan.
See, and I think that's good that you have public here for these hearings, because they might catch something that, well, this really doesn't go with the master plan. And we've had situations when I was on the board for 6 or 7 years where, we didn't catch it as a board, but other individuals did and brought it to our attention. So it's, it's good to have people here for that, because, we can overlook things, and miss it. And so, and once it's approved, then.
Right.
And by and large, most of the developments that we've seen, barring a very few, meet, even though not explicitly, those goals. Plus, you're also dealing with a bit of a piecemeal situation. So everything needs to be looked at almost on its own, and then bring the big picture into it.
But I think adding that
Yes,
to
it's
the
okay.
process for us is something that's going to force us to think about the master plan with every applicant as well, which I think is really important.
I remember, too, what was Ben Lehman from the meeting of planning board people, just with the idea of asking for what you want above and beyond the regulations, and finding that people are willing to accommodate the wishes of the town.
Yeah, and tonight possibly was a good example, if that tree absolutely had to come down, and we suggested, well, if we have to take that down, you should compensate by planting so many more trees on Main Street. Trees aren't that expensive. They'd probably totally go for that, if it meant, and that, it may come to something like that.
In my original discussions with them informally, I did point out that the tree could be an issue clearance-wise, and offered that very same thing, that there would be, you may not put it in the same spot, but,
Right.
located adjacent, or something that would grow smaller, or slower over time.
That's a great example.
And I think that we were talking about the difference between the trees on South Main Street and North Main Street. The South Main Street trees, I think, had been there for quite a while. And the pears that they planted up north, that was something that happened probably within the last 15 years.
Yeah, and some of those were even the last few years because they were replacements, so.
Well, they die a lot,
Yeah.
for
The
one
ones
reason
dying
or
right
another.
now. Yeah, it's a tough environment to get a tree started.
Yeah.
And that's why it's to have to remove a tree that's thriving and that's big is, I think that's to be avoided if, but, you know, this may be a case.
I have a couple of questions for Brian. Brian, those propane tanks, you know, when, because they're on town property and we allowed them to do that. But those things are, what kind of,
We've had that discussion as well.
okay, okay.
Addressing that. And
Because I drove
Joe
by
had some
in there
concerns
this
there.
way, that way, and they're big propane tanks and they come rolling down that hill.
Yeah, and Joe had some concerns with some of the erosion along the road there.
okay.
And again, in the informal conversation, I said, let's finish this one, you know, and it's,
Right.
yes. So,
Right, but I saw that in the notes.
Yes.
You know, that, you know, back whenever, because I was on the board at the time.
yes.
But something else, I drove into, I thought originally when they approved Walmart up there and the color, wasn't that green color a requirement? And I drove in there the other day and they got the Walmart blue now
Right.
and that big orange tower.
Um,
And I'm wondering, because I thought that was part of the condition of approval, that they had, that green had to be in there so that it, you know, it didn't stand out. And I was just wondering if they came to anybody about that?
No, generally, changing well, probably back in the,
Every place else, Walmart is blue.
Yeah.
But that was one of they had that.
right, and they did that.
Now they've got the
Corporately, they
orange.
changed their logo.
They've got the orange.
Yeah, they got the orange now and the blue.
Yeah.
Is that
I think
something?
mostly the concern was the sign at the bottom of the hill.
Mm,
And that was changed back in probably 2008 or 9.
okay. Well, I just.
When corporate redid, they put the spark in instead of what they had used before. They rebranded all their stores nationwide, which kind of brings to another issue with something like that. And it'd be a good thing for the board to consider. When CVS was put in, it was suggested that have a green roof.
Mhm.
That would have been a stopper, because those are corporate colors, the red that they use. Walgreens uses green, competitor, not good. But, you know, because we don't have a severe design review process, I'm wondering if these whims about color
Yeah, well, I
can
mean,
be
yeah.
either straightened out or just say, you know, prevailing. Everybody remembers the huge flap about the McDonald's on Martha's Vineyard,
Yeah.
you know, and how that one had to conform there, but, you know, everybody else could get away with the yellow and red McDonald's that we have.
Yeah, well,
And, you know, they did that in order just to stake a claim in that market at great expense to themselves. I don't know if that's something that is a reasonable request of an applicant here.
Yeah, well, I was, like I say, I was on when CVS got approved, and I understand all that, and that was the
Right.
corporate color. But at some point, I mean, way before I ever moved to town,
Yeah.
and that was approved, that, you know, I thought that was a situation when I noticed going back to the Walmart blue. I mean, it didn't bother me, I was
Right.
just
No,
wondering.
personally, I find that a little bit of a reach on
Yeah.
our part to do
Well,
that.
I agree 100%,
Because
but,
it's not really visible like it is on a downtown presence.
yeah.
Essentially, you have to be on the site to see the building.
Mhm.
And that means that any concerns you'd have about the look, you know, is pretty restricted. It's not,
Oh, yeah.
you know, town-wide.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be up there, to see it, and none of the other stuff
Exactly.
was there before, you know,
But,
so.
you know, and I
But
hope
but
to
I
not-
just saw that, and
I think design restrictions and aesthetic restrictions are pretty difficult to have as far as the zoning ordinance goes, and from what I understand, it's,
That was the only reason that the McDonald's had to do it, is because it was a long and very well crafted historic district,
Yep.
basically.
And that's what it is. I think it has to be a historic district. So if we were to negotiate with the developer to say, hey, we'd like to see this roof be a different color, sure, they may do that. But since there's no actual
Right.
ordinance and then there's really nothing, I would think that, you know, when that
The
has to get
enforcement of it,
replaced,
yeah,
do they have to adhere to that same color? Because we really don't have the.
Is that the same instance with the landscaping at Irving?
I think that's a little bit different, but I think it does come up to a good point. And remember the planning board that workshop we went to, that same guy talked about form-based
Right.
development. And so in other words, like, you can't just say on a whim that we want your Walmart to be a certain color, but particularly in your downtown area, if you had an area that they had any business that goes in there has to conform to certain aesthetics. That is much more enforceable because it's known up front, everybody else is doing it. And chances are, one of those big box stores isn't gonna go in your downtown area anyway. You know, we're talking about other businesses. But I think those are good things to think about, so we do have some standards that, you know, businesses know coming in that, oh, this is how they would like us to look.
The other side of that coin is the Wilson Tire Building. Nobody expected those colors out there. You know, it just came up with it. It's that chrome yellow and
Yeah.
real dark blue. Yeah, and you're right, because, you know, if you're trying to, you can't impose a design. You have to let the design impose itself on, you know, anybody who wants to join the club, basically. You know, the same was true with the development of the Rite Aid. There was a lot of talk about paint and stuff like that to blend in with the downtown and architecturally. Well, I doubt you could find an average building or color anywhere on downtown. So, you know, it was kind of late to the party to try and throw something like that.
To coordinate.
Yeah, you know, and,
Better than Lavertier's.
well, at least you can pronounce it.
Yeah.
It's a fine line, I imagine.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of mimic existing
Yep.
forms. It's
Yes.
broad
Yep.
and not too restrictive, but you get the idea that some consistency is desirable.
But you have to base that consistency on what's consistent, and I think we're kind of lacking in that department, is all I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no
So
chalet
how do you
in
get
downtown
from
Florida.
no, you know, how do you get there though? Because as we
Right,
were
well,
driving
historically, they
down
developed that
North
way.
Main Street tonight, you know,
Live free or die.
doesn't look
There you go.
that nice. So how do you get movement in that direction? I don't know.
And this, you know, this kind of discussion right here, I think, is an incredibly important one for us to be having. I think we continue to have these. They're, you know, and obviously we can't have our meetings be 5 hours long, but when I think we have the opportunity to talk the philosophy of development and the philosophy of what makes good design and what makes good living spaces, you know, I think we should have that. Is anyone familiar with the book Pattern Language by Christopher Alexander? It's like a classic book. And I have a copy of it. I'd be happy to lend it to people. It's fascinating because what Christopher Alexander talks about are certain patterns in all kinds of different things that people are just drawn to, that make good places that people want to be in, right? So, you know, I think it's just to skim through this thing, I think is fodder for thought. And then the other book I would say is Geography of Nowhere by Kunstler, who, you know, really talks about why we have places that nobody in their right mind would be caught in anything but an automobile. You know, that we make places that nobody wants to be in. You know, we sacrifice whole areas of our towns. And, you know, I think those are just good things at least to think about. You know, what makes good living spaces?
I think what would be helpful too as we move forward and continue these discussions, because I think you're sort of thinking sort of big picture and big ideas here, but trying to ground it in examples of other communities and trying to pull in people to help us figure out the answers to these questions that we're raising. So I'm not quite sure how we do that yet, but it would be
Experts like Dr. Whitman
Yep.
could come and give a presentation.
but just trying to get some help with
Yeah.
people that have some ideas that can help us, because our job isn't necessarily to be the experts on this stuff. We're here to sort of take that information and help figure out what the town wants and do the best we can do at sort of matching those things. So, yeah, this is good.
But it helps to have a base of knowledge
Yeah.
and a common language, you know, so when we discuss these things, because a lot of these things really, there's no vocabulary for them, and that's one of the problems. You know, the vocabulary of bad places.
Yeah.
We don't have a common way of talking about that. We just know there's certain places we go there and we do our business, but it's not like people want to go there. And to have places that people don't want to go, that's kind of weird, you know, when you think about it. That's not like, there's no need for that. So.
What kind of places you talking about, like the dentist or
Well, I'm
something?
telling you, Tenny Mountain Highway. If you see someone walking on Tenny Mountain Highway, do you think, oh, look, there's someone out for a nice walk on Tenny Mountain Highway? What's your first thought about seeing
Guy's
someone?
car broke down.
Yeah, car broke down, DWI.
Doesn't have a license.
Unsavory character, because no one in their right mind wants to be in a place like that in anything but an automobile, getting to one box store to the, as quick as, that place was designed not for people, for an automobile.
Right.
And those aren't places that people become attached to, and they're places that once you start down that road, it's like, oh, that place is a sacrifice zone anyway. Who cares what happens down there? You have places that people don't care about.
Right.
You know?
It's the creative placemaking idea. You know, you want to build your community so it's a place where people of all sorts want to be and are comfortable.
Yeah. But still, yeah, providing the resources and
Right.
It's kind of
I would invite a reminder that this body established Tenny Mountain Highway as the place for future development.
Right.
So
Commercial zone.
you're gonna have people walking. And we're gonna need to build sidewalks, bike paths.
I noticed a lot of people biking lately, like commuter bikers. I think that's great. And our development should include consideration of that, desire. People in the community obviously are desiring to do that.
But here's the thing, if you put a sidewalk on Tenny Mountain, the way it is now, no one, because people try to do that with their strips, no one wants to walk on that thing because there's no buffer to protect them from automobiles are whizzing by right there. There's no trees, there's no enclosed spaces. We can do better. We could make Tenny Mountain, you know, still be our viable, you know, commercial district, but be a nice place to be, that people could walk there, that, you know, there's things to do when you're out there besides just drive through a drive-through window. I mean, we can make that really nice. We could think outside the box and make it a little bit
We
different.
need to.
And we need to.
Well, you know, a lot of the development patterns that we've seen are just kind of evolutionary. You know, coming from the big city, I remember you didn't have to drive that far to get out of the urban environment and encounter truck farms and orange groves, okay? And those get swallowed up. And usually at the outskirts you find car lots, for example. The next iteration is strip malls. The next iteration is purpose-built places. So, you know, and it takes a long time for that to happen, obviously. You know, that's all predicated on the fact that the traffic flow is still going to be there, which a lot of the places in the West lost when they redid the highways. But Tenny Mountain, it's essentially permanent. We can understand that. You know, there's long been the idea of interconnected roads off of the highway itself, between properties. A few people have made stabs at that, just informally down at, you know, where the light is at Boulder Point. The guy from the aquarium went to the guy next door and said, hey, it's a pretty gentle slope. Can I put a graveled access so we can obtain the light? And they said, sure. So what DOT wanted many, many years ago for the design portion of it, people are doing on their own when they see, hey, this is really the way to go. I talked to a guy today who's probably going to be coming back for a very, very light development, but it's on Tenny Mountain Highway. And he shows an interior road, one driveway cut, and then an interior road, you know, in either direction with islands at the driveway cut, which is a great idea. And he was already talking about maybe tapping into whoever might want to take access through there with the abutters on either side of it. So, and this is a guy, he's just, looking to do a very low impact recreational establishment out there. And, from the looks of the design, of course, he's a surveyor, you could put just about anything behind it, because that's the kind of frontage we want. It's exactly what you were talking about, where you have the highway, you have the buffer, and then you have road/sidewalk on the interior and away from the whizzing traffic. Because none of us really have a problem walking at parking lot speed vehicles. It's even though that's where most of the accidents occur, but they're not fatal, as opposed to being smacked.
Well, it certainly is safer, but, it's still not pleasant. But in any event, I think those, that's the kind of density, like when Steve Whitman talks about density and, mixed use in a place like Tenny Mountain, he's talking about not having like a box store in the middle of a parking lagoon, surrounded by parking, because of zoning laws that require all kinds of weird setbacks, to have things more densely located, and have adequate amount of not like more parking than they'll ever need, so, yeah.
All right.
I'll make a motion.
I have two more things. One is just a reminder, I won't be here next meeting. The other is, it's a work session. We have our site visit. Is there anything else we want to do after that meeting, that we need to do at that point? Do we need to start thinking, thinking about zoning, any zoning things?
Right. If you want to call it an early meeting, that would be fine with everybody, I think.
Yeah, so that would be.
Especially if you're not going to be here.
I feel confident you guys could carry on in my absence.
Well, yeah, but not with those kind of things. Though.
Yeah. So, but if we want to, that is enough. So if we just have our 5:30 meeting at the Panther Pub, and then we could
go to the Panther Pub after.
Maybe or maybe not.
And I think that, but just being able to be prepared. Because you might make a decision for that application, so you might want to come back here. I don't know. It's yeah.
Do you?
Actually, if we continued the meeting to the site meeting, then I think we have to finish it.
Okay, so we have to finish it.
Right.
Or
it could be continued
Yep.
again to the next regular meeting.
Yep.
I wonder, though, if they were aware of that, because with talking about sending representatives, because didn't she said she would be out of town?
Yeah, but it was a work session, not an actual meeting. But I think, I do think that we have in my time on the board, we have a long history of approving things as we see them. But I really like us taking our time with things and getting to see things. And I think that's something that we need to do more often. So when we have those questions, I think that's important. So, and just on your end, Brian, I think it makes sense just to let people know that we don't necessarily rubber stamp things on the first night. So I think that will help just with the perception.
To be honest with you, Madam Chair, people are shocked that they get it accepted and approved the same night. They're usually geared for battle.
Expecting that, yeah. But I think what happens is when we get applicants that maybe aren't, I know I've seen people that are maybe just don't deal with the planning boards. They just don't really know what we do. So, so that's good feedback to get too. So, anyway, so we should all just expect that it doesn't have to take one evening. So.
Okay. Just so I got the language correct, we had the motion to continue, but the date certain was actually at the work session, correct?
Yes.
I don't know how to either extend it or stop the meeting at that point, you know what I'm saying?
Does it have to be a public hearing?
There would have to be a public hearing. It doesn't have to be renoticed because it was continued to a date certain.
Because I did close the public hearing, but we're continuing the application, so it has to be a.
Correct, it was back to the board, so there would be no more abutter input
Yeah,
at
okay.
that point
Yeah.
anyway. But, because it looks like that's when the decision was going to be made, or
Yep.
the whole thing brought back up,
Yep.
not that it was just a discrete site visit.
Right. No, I would assume that so I guess it's up to the board if we want to decide that while standing around on the sidewalk around potentially a poplar tree, or if, or
I think
if,
if any discussions on what was seen and what possible decisions you would make would be better served to be done here on tape.
I agree.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
right.
so we can go look, but what I'm thinking is, I think, Joe, I don't think they were totally understanding what you were telling them, is the feeling I got, because I think what they were talking about is the little bit of snow that everybody has to remove in front of their doorways. And I think if they could see your concerns, we might be able to more easily come to some kind of understanding and agreement.
All right.
And plus, I mean, there could be a really simple solution by cutting some branches, and I don't know, but I won't feel comfortable unless I'm there and I can see whatever.
There is interference at height.
Yeah.
From the tree coming up, when it splits into its various branches, it does tend towards the building. And because of the height of the tractor, it could scrape the cap, and that's Joe's concern. I don't know enough about trees to say, oh, just take that limb out. You know, it looked pretty big to me. I don't know whether it would kill the tree or I don't know enough about it, and you do, so, you know. You
Yeah,
do
I
make
could,
that
yeah.
Okay. So I think unless the board feels like we can't make a decision at that point, then, so I mean, the option is always to continue it again if we feel like we need more input, so, but,
Perhaps the safest course would be to,
plan on returning here.
or plan on continuing to a further date certain. And that way we'd come back in session here at the next business meeting, or, you know, I kind of hate to throw business onto the work session, since it seems like we're finally going to start doing some work. But, you know, that's entirely up to the board. I really don't have a recommendation in this, because it's, you know, ifs and ands, and there's really no real clear path. So I think the safest thing to do would be to not make a decision, even though you meet in quorum, and do it at the next meeting.
The one thing I just want to think about is if we start to say the quorum that's there next week, if we have a different combination of people, just what's our take on, so say I miss a meeting and then we're trying to vote, and then I miss the next one, Bridget and I missed that, and then, but we're there at our next public
Right.
hearing meeting. Can we vote on that application because we've heard part of it, or does that mean that we've just got such a piecemeal that we can't make a decision until we have the right 5 people here?
The more educated the board is on the case before them, the happier everybody is.
Yep.
I don't think that there's anything, you know, usually it follows with not approving the minutes. You know, not being there, you didn't see it. However, everybody sitting here tonight has a pretty good grasp of what the project is about. The board, even with missing members, will meet in quorum and view the site. Perhaps it would be better not to do anything other than open the meeting, take a few comments, close the site visit meeting with the, you know, the only real decision I think the board could safely make would be to say, we're going to continue this discussion at the next meeting. And that way, but that doesn't answer your question. Just because you miss a meeting doesn't mean that you can't vote.
Right, okay. All right.
And I think, you know, I mean, we discuss it and share the information
Yeah. Right.
that
Okay.
the other 5 had,
Gotcha.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's almost like sending out a professional survey party and come back to report to the board.
Okay.
Except it happens to be a board in quorum doing it, so they can always fill the other members in.
Okay. So I guess I leave it up to everybody else. If you want to plan to continue it, that's fine, or if we want to, I mean, I don't know, what do you think?
I think we could play it by ear, like, you know, we go down there and we're seeing it, and then all of a sudden we say, oh, yeah, this is, and everybody just says, that solves the problem. Or maybe it doesn't, so it just kind of got to wait and see what happens when we go look.
I think if the solution gets complicated, like, all right, that tree can't stay there, we're gonna have to mitigate by making sure we plant several other trees. I think that's the kind of thing we'd have to reconvene as a board and get input from everybody here. If it got complicated like that.
Right.
Because right now, the tree and the plow machine are the two items in question. Otherwise, it, probably would have approved it.
Is that too loosey-goosey for you, Brian?
I'm sorry.
If we might continue it, we might not.
No, I think it's fine, actually.
Okay.
It's just a matter of making sure that all of the, gotta take better notes than I have been. That's all I mean. Because we won't have the benefit of the
Right.
transcript to look back on.
I think, what,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead, no, you.
I was gonna ask, what is the timing with the zoning board? Is there a typical process when the variance is required? Do they go there
First Tuesday
first?
of every month.
So will this be up before the zoning board? Before
The ZBA will be heard
2 days.
before the site visit,
So
by 2
might
days.
it then
It'll
be
be on the
moved?
2nd.
It might be moot.
And we'll get that information.
Or chances are, if they approve the concept and they do trust the planning board, they may say that, they may condition it, that it's only approved with the approval of site plan review.
Double condition.
Yes.
Yeah.
But,
Double entendre.
the condition that would have been asked for tonight, had you approved it, is moot because the next meeting will be after the zoning board meets.
Okay.
So essentially, they will be asked to do the same thing at the end of the meeting that you did,
Yeah.
which is move it on to the next board.
Right. So there's no typical, it just depends on how the calendar falls.
This was all calendric, yes. A lot of people will, if it's kind of an issue, would rather secure the zoning board first, because there's mutability in what you guys do here, whereas the ZBA looks mostly at the letter and the intent of the law. So one is, you get permission to do it, you guys tell them, how, essentially. So now, if it had to come this way, it kind of works both ways. But, they couldn't have acted without seeing both of your boards.
Right.
And it's, it may put a little bit of onus coming from the planning board first, but they shouldn't be looking at any approvals on this side, because it's all about design stuff. Whereas they're looking at, is this a feasible thing to grant?
And I think I asked this before, but what is the role of precedence? Let's say the zoning board says, yep, you can have your building right up to the sidewalk, and then does that follow with everybody who wants to expand right up to the sidewalk? They kind of
It's a special exception use, so there is a little bit of precedence there. Remember, a special exception is an approved use with conditions. But it might be that they allow me to build right to the zero line, and Rebecca would have to hold back 2 feet because of some other feature on her property, which is, located right next to me.
Yeah.
For example, the intervening building has no tree in front of it, the one with the driveway.
Right.
They have the same property line, they share the property line all the way up. They have a patio out there. The precedence would be, in this case, if they come and say, hey, we want to build here, but then it depends what they want to build, because it's not a commercial establishment, it's a residency.
Yeah.
I can't see anything that would require that in the same use, so there's change of use involved in there.
It's tricky.
And again, the highway would come in and talk to them about, that issue as well. But mostly when they talk about precedents in zoning, it has to do with variances more than anything.
Yeah, I guess what I'm wondering is, would we be concerned at
You might start a creep here.
shrinking the sidewalk? If that were a potential outcome, would that
It's
be
available
of
to
concern?
anybody as it stands right now. Is it going to get worse if the thing if everybody does it along there. But remember, there's not many buildings that could possibly go this way. I don't think it would work for the Tedeschi's business model. Certainly, you know, the laundromat hosts a roast beef place now, so they have outdoor seating.
Right.
That works very well in a patio setting.
Right.
The one next door, I think, is just a buffer. You know, there's a little bit of lawn in front of it, actually. You know, but if you move down the street, you know, it changes. You get just north of the Tedeschi's and it's Patty Stewart's place, which looks like a home. You know, it has the gardens out in front and the picket fence. The next lot up is vacant and it drops down to the river. And then there's the monkey. So, you know, there was no pattern of development other than pell-mell and willy-nilly.
Right, right.
One thing I think we need to be careful, and this is not related to this project at all, is these giant curb cuts like at Tedeschi's or whatever it's called, just where it's, to me, that's the biggest threat to pedestrians, is the fact that cars could drive on any stretch of that. So just something to think about if we, yeah. Anyway.
But that's a unique situation. You don't see it up at Kirk's, for example. He's got a curb cut, even though the curb is, you could drive over it at any point without risking your tire. There are clear inlets and outlets.
Yeah, no, it's a funky spot. Okay,
Thank you.
so we'll be prepared to discuss it at the next meeting after the site visit, or, and I think you should be able to know at the site visit, or just come back here and talk about it, so you'll figure it out, right? That works?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. I'm really tired for some
Yeah.
reason. Anything else from anybody?
Do you have a last public comment on this thing, or are we done?
Oh, yeah, at the discretion of the chair.
Right, that's why I asked you.
Yep. Any public comments this evening?
Yes.
You have 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I didn't think you'd ever ask. The discussion you had, a subject before that about Tenny Mountain Highway and designing and concepts like what is in our master plan for implementation. If you take a list, write a list out of every concept of every subject that we've got in the implementation plan, requires a discussion. And what I was trying to get across was you have concepts, which is what every one of those names of those items we have in our implementation plan of our master plan is a concept. And you have to transition from the concept into design plan, and from design plan into permitting. So your concept is a general purpose group of what would we like to see. You have to have that in appropriate words, because when you start to get into design and permitting, you need engineers, architects, land surveyors, natural scientists, town planners, and so on to deal with specifics, okay? So I deal with design airports. I have 8 federal agencies. I have to deal with 8 state agencies and the town agencies. And I have to be able to deal with each one of those agencies having the authority, having jurisdiction that deal with specific specified numbers. And in order to affect a plan, such as our implementation plan of our master plan, is that you need to get from the concept to the permitting, design and permitting area, so that we can go to a professional engineer or architect and say, hey, could you lay this out so that it would meet the codes and standards so that it could get approved? When you come before a board, the first thing you're going to say is, this been approved by a licensed engineer for drainage? Has this been approved by a licensed safety engineer for sidewalk design and interface with conflict of traffic? Has this been approved by wetlands and or natural scientists for maintaining the natural environment that we are trying to maintain in the town? The problem is, people do not have the vocabulary of their feelings of what they want in a concept, and then they don't have the process of the vocabulary of the industries of people who have to give us the professional
specifications that they have to sign off as being legal, lawful, and valid in order to get this body or a Department of State of New Hampshire body to approve the design. And that has been our problem since I was on the original master plan for the town back in 1983, 84. We have still got some of our items on our implementation plan that we established back then. That's 30-some years ago. And the problem is, this body has some connectability to the technical aspects of designing a town, but the average citizen does not. And so when people are trying to say, we would like to see this happen in our town or not see this happen in our town, they don't have the vocabulary of their feelings to get it to a workable agenda item that would meet our part of our master plan implementation. And so when I made that statement from the last meeting was, I'm trying to say that we do need to have a discussion on how do we move our master plan forward and get that connectability between our concept of our ideas we'd like to see happen and some concrete action that the town planner could receive and schedule for implementation. And that's, I think, part of our problems in today, and that's what I was trying to get across. So, and I think the other thing, our master plan is strategic planning, and the planning board process is reactive planning. You react to an applicant, comply with the configurations of state and or town ordinances for design and use and land use, but you react to an applicant. Master plan is strategic planning. We're talking 5-10 years out. So there's two different mindsets. Thank you.
Hopefully those comments will come through the minutes better next month. Thanks, Frank.
Anything else? Anybody else?
I'll make a motion that we will adjourn for the night.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any